continuity because of the Bridge Street project to Puffin, but more importantly for the durability. When we walked this street, what we found was that this is an area where there are not many sidewalks, and people tend to drive up over the sidewalk, and this part of the curbing has not held up. And so we wanted to make sure we had granite curbing in this area. This is the only area where we would have new granite curbing. We would have the concrete sidewalks, but we would have a paver strip that runs close to the edge of the sidewalk, again, that would connect the Bridge Street project down to Puffin's, I think this one actually would come down to closer to School Street, to keep the continuity between the 1990s treatment of the road and what's being done in Bridge Street, so that we keep that going. That's the only place where we'll be using the pavers. We have some pictures to show you here. This is, as you know, EB, the northern end of the EB complex, and we wanted to show you the condition of the street now and what you would see after we are done. You see that on the eastern side of the road there is a replacement of the sidewalk, replacing the deteriorated sidewalk, and you'll see that there is concrete curbing there. On the western side of the street, you'll see the asphalt treatment that goes along the fence there, and you'll see that that's what is there now, but we're going to just replace that asphalt treatment there. This is the area near Garbo, and you'll see the street there, and there are a couple of features that we wanted to point out to you. Again, on the eastern side of the street, you'll see the current sidewalk. You'll see it repaired, and you'll see the concrete curbing. What you see that's new on the western side of the street is a new sidewalk, and that's the sidewalk that would go up to the northern gate of EB. One of the things that we learned in the survey was that continuous sidewalks were important to people, so we wanted to continue them to the points where people are using them. People don't walk along the EB gate there, so we didn't need them there, so we wanted to stop when we got to the northern gate. The other thing that you're going to see on the right-hand side of the new slide is the retaining wall. What we need to have is that retaining wall built up for a crash height. I'm sure Tony can tell more about that. And we need the bar there because there are safety regulations that say that we need to have a crash wall there so people couldn't go over that retaining wall. Do you want to add anything more about?
And also at that location, we're proposing to set that wall back further into the private property, which is something we'll have to deal with in order to make room for a sidewalk, which doesn't exist today.
This is the water side of that same retaining wall, and you'll see that one of the things we did to cut costs is for the water side of the retaining walls, we would simply have a plain concrete wall. We're not going to do the liner forms. This is the area at where School Street comes down, near the former Sportsman's Cafe. You'll see in the left-hand slide the current paver treatment. You really can't see the pavers there. You really can't tell where the crosswalks are. What you can see is that one of the things we learned in the survey is that people did not think that the paver crosswalks were very important. So one way that we could save an awful lot of money is just to do our crosswalks with a painted crosswalk. You'll see that it's much more visible. Another thing that we'd like you to see is that, as I pointed out before, the granite curbing and the sidewalk remain the same as they are now. There are also lights in this area, and I'll just take a moment to speak to that. We're not going to be replacing any of the traffic lights. You'll notice, I believe on the left-hand side of the picture, you'll notice the green nautical lights. And if you've been down Thames Street, you'll know that there are a mixture of black acorn lights and green nautical lights. The green nautical lights need to be replaced because they are obsolete and we can't get the parts for them anymore. Originally, that cost was in the project. That cost has been taken out of the project. In fact, all pedestrian scale lighting has been taken out of the project. The lights that are there now are being replaced by the Groton Utilities. They have replaced 5 of them already. There's one that would still need to be replaced, and that will be done through a normal highway appropriations. Basically, what we did in order to reduce the costs of this project was to focus strictly on road reconstruction, the necessary retaining walls, the drainage improvements, utility needs, curbing, and basic sidewalk improvements. We did look at alternative strategies, which we'll talk about as we look at the cost. We reduced any surface level improvements, the pedestrian scale lighting, the pavers, the landscaping was reduced drastically. You might remember from the earlier one, there were street trees and things like that. All of that has been reduced enormously. The total cost of the project, when you put in the construction items, including the soft costs, the final design, inspection, testing, permits, all of those kinds of things, comes to $6,375,504. This is a reduction of over $4 million, 41% of the cost being cut down. I would like to point out at this point that on page 9 of the committee report, there is an error. If you have that committee report with you, I inadvertently put the reduction where I should have put the total cost, which only goes to show that no matter how many times you look over a document, even an English teacher can make an error. But if you look at page 9 where it's under recommendations, where it says the total cost of the project, instead I put the reductions. So if you would change that number to $6,375,504, I will make sure that that is corrected in any subsequent copies of this report. Do you see it where the error is?
Oh, I think it looks right. Appropriate.
What?
I think it looks right.
Oh, it's in paragraph 2.
It's in
paragraph 2. Paragraph 2.
Oh, I see. Yep.
the charts are correct.
Yeah.
It's just in the narrative.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Councilor Perizzotti for pointing that out to me. I really do appreciate it. This is going to be much easier for you to see in your committee report than it is here. And I just wanted to point out some of the things. We've talked about several of these elements here, but I did want to point out a couple of them. The roadway, for instance, we've talked about how that was reduced. That was reduced in the different treatments that will take place at different parts of the street. Traffic signals, we are not going to be replacing. There is a schedule for replacing traffic signals, but this hasn't been eliminated completely because we're going to be using conduit for these traffic signals that will not need to be dug up all the time so that we aren't constantly ripping up the road as that schedule of traffic signal replacement happens. The curbing, basically the cost reduction here is based on the area of the street where we will be using concrete curbing instead of granite curbing. In the sidewalks, we have drastically reduced any use of pavers. We do have that one strip that goes from Bridge Street down to School Street, or an area near School Street, but we've eliminated them from the radii at the crosswalks. The drainage slightly reduced due to the use of plastic pipes. The lighting, again, 100%, that was pedestrian scale lighting. And for those of us who were on the original Thames Street Committee, boy, this was hard, but we knew what we were asked to do, and we did it. We took out even the really tough things for us. The retaining walls, interestingly enough, this reduction is due to a couple of things. One is the fact that the collapse near Paul's Pasta we expect to be taken care of with federal funds. Also, the retaining wall that's near the Costa property, I don't know if you're familiar with that, it's just north of the old municipal building where the Bootlegger restaurant used to be, if you know that area. The city has purchased the Costa property, and their plans for the Costa property include moving the wall in, and Tony can explain why this is true, but because of their plans for the property, there's a $400-some-odd-thousand reduction in what it will cost to take care of that wall. And Tony, you can explain why.
When the preliminary design was drawn up and how we arrived at the figures for the initial referendum, that was a very tall wall. At the time, the city didn't own the property. Once they acquired the property and came up with plans to develop that property into a parklet, they planned to raise the grade, place a lot of fill on that property. So what happened was a very tall wall got very short. and it saved a tremendous amount of money in conjunction with this project.